Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. December the 1st, Los Angeles Staples Center. Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Someone's O is going to go. And it's the what next that is almost as interesting as that fight itself. There's just so many variables about what may come next, especially when you consider one of those variables is Tyson Fury. And no doubt with this fight, some reputations are going to be enhanced, others may take a battering. And whether that's fair or not, well, that's just boxing, that's just life. But let's start with Tyson Fury and talk about what could we expect to happen if he wins or if he loses? He comes into this fight with one of the most formidable punches in the game off the back of two very soft warm-up fights. One in June against Fury, and that turned out to be a bit of a farce. And then there was 10 rounds of light sparring with Francesco Pianetta in August. I actually did have someone say to me the other day, look at Fury, just look how good he looks. How could anyone doubt him heading into this fight? And my response was effectively, well, we've just got no form to judge him on heading into this fight. He was out for a couple of years on a bender, and, he's been training like a madman, but we just don't know what he's got left. And no wonder the bookies do have him as an underdog. No wonder many fans like myself are a bit skeptical of what version of Tyson Fury is going to show up. Because do we really know? I mean, sure, he might look good on the pads, he might look good that he's lost some weight, but, is he rinsed, or is he going to go in there and put on a masterclass? Well, we're going to find out shortly. And when you think about it, this sort of roll of the dice, well, this is what it appears to be while Fury is still motivated to train. This fight, it's all upside for him. If he wins, it certainly caps a fairy tale comeback. A comeback so unthinkable a short time ago that you'd be laughed at if you suggested it just a year ago. If he wins, someone's going to make a movie. And even then, if you saw that movie, you'd find it hard to believe all that was going on. And let's face it, if he does win, when many thought that he was underdone in terms of his comeback, he probably gets more credit for beating Wilder than if he had have waited and had the full complement of comeback fights that many people thought would have been, the proper thing to do. But a win, it would probably cement Tyson Fury as a modern-day hero for some. One of the best of his generation, if not the best. And that's how some people will view a win, coming from how far he's come back from, and then put on the Vladimir Klitschko fight on top. And it certainly would go down as one of the best comeback stories in all of sport, not just boxing, in all of sport. But if he loses, which, many do expect to happen, it's not going to come as a shock to a lot of people. Most people, well, some people, many people are expecting him to turn up, do his thing for a few rounds, potentially tire, and then towards the end be flat on his back from a Deontay Wilder right hand. That certainly is the prevailing fan theory about how this fight ends. But if it does end that way, well, Fury, he's still going to come out of this fight with a degree of credit given where he's come from to challenge the WBC heavyweight champion. But a lot of fans, they will see the fight as having come too soon. I mean, people are saying that already, and that he should have waited for, had a proper comeback, had a full complement of fights before taking on, someone of the danger of Wilder, who is currently in his prime. But the reality is, while this fight does appear to be mostly upside for Fury, because if he wins, he'll be a hero, but if he loses, well, he was expected to lose. But regardless of the result, for Deontay Wilder, there certainly, in my view, is not nearly as much credit to be gained. If he wins, some people are going to say that he cherry-picked Fury who wasn't ready. And other fans just won't give him his due just because they don't want to give him his due. But if he did lose, if Wilder did lose, the knives would certainly be out. But I'll come to that a little bit later on when I do get to Wilder. A loss, though, for Tyson Fury, for all involved with him, it would mean they would come under the microscope. Many fans would be quick to turn on Fury's promoter Frank Warren and will no doubt question why he made this fight so soon. But I would note Warren, he has certainly been at pains to point out that it was Fury's idea. He insisted it be made, that he was the driving force behind this fight getting made. But even making those sorts of comments, that distinction, some will say that Warren's getting his excuse in early, that he's trying to distance himself in case things do go pear-shaped. But obviously if things win, people will say it was a master stroke. But now that there have been some stories circulating of financial issues or financial difficulties for Frank Warren, Some will say that he had other motivations to make that fight. I mean, certainly I'm seeing people suggesting that already in comment sections and videos all over YouTube. But, make no mistake, Warren, he'll cop some flack no matter what happens, especially in a loss. But, he's a veteran guy. He'll just ride it out as he always does. Fighters rise and fall, but, the guy that's usually left standing, it's the promoter. Perhaps the guy on Team Fury who may well come in for more criticism than he deserves if Fury loses is Ben Davison, the young trainer who took Fury from about 400 pounds to the shape he's in today. There will be the inevitable "he was too young and experienced" claim, and people will say that Tyson Fury should never have left Peter Fury. Well, they're already saying that. I mean, the way that Tyson Fury tells it is that he had to leave. He couldn't get motivated anymore under Peter Fury, his uncle. He needed a change of scene, a change of setup, and that change of setup and scene has effectively been doing his own thing with Ben Davison. But let's not forget, should Tyson Fury win, Ben Davison will be lauded as the next great trainer in the making. I mean, the line between success and failure, as fans see it, as the public see it in general, it's a fickle one. But I think Davison deserves an immense amount of credit for keeping Fury motivated in what essentially has been a year-long training camp. And we can't forget, it's not just Davison who's going to be supporting Fury in the final push to the fight, with Ricky Hatton and Freddie Roach also in his corner. Plus also, Frank Warren is on the scene as well. He's got years of experience, to add to the situation as well. But I guess win or lose, the what next for Tyson Fury, it's a bit of a Pandora's box. What will his future contain? Because I'm not totally convinced that he'll ever fight again, win or lose. I mean, some of the statements that he's been making have been to the effect that a win may be enough for him. And he sort of expressed similar sentiment for a loss as well. But I guess some of it may depend on, how he wins or how he loses. But if he does win, one thing that he said recently, it stuck with me. He said he goes through these massive highs, say for example like the Klitschko win, but it's always accompanied by a massive low. And that two ends of the spectrum has always been a balancing out act, as Fury sort of put it, that, one doesn't come without the other. So regardless of what happens, if he wins or loses, he may sort of sink into depression again anyway. And while he's spoken about getting better about managing his mental health, that's no guarantee that he won't lapse after this fight. His motivation and desire to box again, it could sort of fall off a cliff again. He's actually joked about that happening, but it could happen. Fury has spoken about himself, Wilder and Anthony Joshua needing to face each other to prove who's really the best in the division, the best of their era. So potentially, if he does win, maybe the lure of an Anthony Joshua fight would be enough to keep him on track. He has spoken about needing to have goals to work towards, and that certainly would be a goal to work towards, a massive domestic fight in the United Kingdom. That could potentially be for all the belts. Maybe that would be enough. But win or lose, there's certainly a massive question mark about Tyson Fury and the what next. And I know some are automatically thinking, well, there's a two-way rematch clause here. They're just going to automatically rematch each other. That, that will be in the works no matter what, should Fury win. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, he was meant to face Vladimir Klitschko on a rematch, and that never happened. And I guess this time around, he does have more support around him, and perhaps, some of the signs that went a bit unchecked previously, maybe they could be picked up and acted upon sooner. But, who knows what will happen with Tyson Fury after this fight. But the equation for Deontay Wilder does appear to be much simpler. If he wins, he can pick up the lineal status from Fury, and then he could enter into negotiations with Anthony Joshua for an undisputed fight in April. But even in that scenario, there's certainly no guarantee that a fight gets made with Joshua, especially given the vast financial elements connected with that fight. And we've already seen a 3-month negotiation, fall over earlier this year. So they've got 3 weeks this time. I mean, I'm not holding my breath. But apart from that undisputed fight, I mean, where does Wilder go? I mean, potentially there could be a rematch with Fury, but as I said, I mean, who knows? We don't even really know the conditions that they have in place, for their rematch clauses. And there's no guarantee Fury will take it immediately anyway. But outside of that fight and the Joshua fight, there's actually seemingly very few big fights for Wilder to go after. I mean, he could potentially rematch Luis Ortiz or face his mandatory Dominic Breazeale. But in all reality, those are not pay-per-view fights. They won't be. They won't generate anywhere near the sort of money that, a Fury fight will, or a Joshua fight. There's a reason that they've been quibbling with Eddie Hearn over these splits. They want as much of the pie as possible to take on that level of risk and to try cash in and get as much of the pie as they can. That's what both sides have been trying to do. And it probably will be the biggest fight in the heavyweight division in the past decade. And it'll be the first undisputed fight in almost 2 decades. But even then, financial considerations, it could, see that thing not happen, or at least not happen next. But should Wilder lose to Fury? I mean, certainly that's a situation he won't want to entertain. But, a lot of fans would say it was a cherry pick gone wrong, and some will question his talent as a result. And this is where I go back to what I was talking about earlier, that if Wilder beats Fury, he probably doesn't get the credit that he feels he deserves from fans. But if he loses, some fans will be looking to pile in and bring up his resume and say he was a protected fighter, all that sort of thing. So apart from picking up the lineal status and some potential negotiating power that would come from a win over Fury, Wilder doesn't really stand to gain nearly as much credit as, he would no doubt like. And he's previously spoken about wanting his well-earned due credit, his well-earned due respect, both his words. He did that after beating Stavern the first time, saying no one could doubt him now. But they still did. He said the same thing before the Ortiz fight, and people still doubted him after. And if he beats Fury, some fans will still no doubt doubt him, saying that Fury wasn't ready. In part, some of the doubt and unwillingness of some fans, it stems from Wilder's long run of development fights, and it's mostly middling opponents at championship level. He was in a lot of fights no one was really calling for. Spilka, Molina, Areola, Washington. I mean, the fights no one really was asking for, and they were all voluntaries, not the sort of fights that people wanted. And while Wilder often publicly says he doesn't know why he's not bigger than he is or why people doubt him, surely he must realize that the careful matchmaking in his career has contributed to where he's at in terms of his stardom and his commercial value. But 2018 has seen him take on much tougher challenges in Luis Ortiz, a fight that people thought was 50-50. He passed that test. And now he's looking to take on Tyson Fury, Taker Zoe, on December 1st. But the reality is, Deontay Wilder is unlikely to get the sort of attention, the sort of respect, the sort of money that he craves without cleaning out the division. He can become a massive star in boxing, much bigger than he is, if he does fight and beat Anthony Joshua, a rival of his who currently has 3 of the 4 main belts at heavyweight. So for me, that is the glaring what next to knock off for Deontay Wilder. It would appear to be the obvious option, especially if he wants to build his legacy, as he often tells us. What do you make of it all? Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. What next? Who's next? What's going to happen? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.